All right, everyone, I think we're live. You never know with the technology these days. Anyway, Matt Geller here from New Grad Optometry. This is going to be an awesome hangout we've got planned with Dr. Jesse Kahnk, and I'll give him a short introduction in a minute. So as you guys know, New Grad Optometry, dedicated resource for pretty much all free content and resources just like this to helping new graduates and seasoned docs succeed in practice. The webinar tonight is special because Jesse's got an amazing story to share. And we got two awesome sponsors on this who have really been supporting New Grad Optometry since day one, Vision Source and Essilor. And I know it seems like two big names and these colossal names, but really it's incredible the interactions that I'm able to have with them and how much and how dedicated they are to supporting new graduates. When we first started, we really looked for companies that would truly embrace new graduates, and you're watching two of them support this here. So big thanks to them for allowing this webinar to happen and for supporting it. So, I'm Dr. Matt Geller on behalf of New Grad Optometry, but that's not the fun part. We've got Dr. Jesse Kahnk here. And as you guys know, he wrote an article on New Grad Optometry that really took off, and it was titled "Here's How Vision Source Helped Me Purchase 3 practices in 3 months." And I think there was like 6 or 10 comments or so. It blew up, and we wanted to get him back on to talk about that process. So Jesse, jump right into it. Tell us the backstory here a little bit on how that happened. Oh, no, by the way, guys, he's an OSU grad, class of 2013, so he's not very far out from school for achieving such a big milestone in his life.
Well, hey, Matt, thanks for having me. So like you said, I graduated from Ohio State 2013. Interesting story. I think we'll get to it eventually, but didn't really have a plan when I was getting to the end of school. It wasn't like I had an idea that this is what I was going to do. Needed a job really out of school. So got a job back with my optometrist from back home, the guy who introduced me to optometry, who wrote my letter of recommendation, got me into optometry school, basically. And he gave me a job, and I got a chance to kind of see how private practice worked. And kind of going through it, and like I said, I think we'll get into it more as we go, but had an opportunity to buy into his practice, and that kind of led to us again as a practice looking for opportunities that were there and presented to us. And you kind of mentioned Vision Source being a part of this. We're a part of a network, and Vision Source kind of acts us that, hey, maybe take a look and see if there isn't any other opportunities. And so we did some research. Vision Source definitely helped us to kind of look and do some demographics, and we found a couple of spots that have worked out pretty well for us. And so, yeah, we're in a really short amount of time. I ended up with 3 practices and really got it fine.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I mean, I'm a 2013 graduate as well, and I personally, I've always had my hands full, but I seriously can't imagine doing that. I mean, even one practice for some new graduates is extremely challenging, but I guess, is it as difficult, or is it as scary, or is it as hard as, what we're, kind of made to feel, or the way it seems, from the sidelines, or is it not that bad?
You like watch Shark Tank or something, and they have like the guy who comes on, he's like, I started my first business when I was 6 selling newspapers, and now this is like the 47th business I've opened, and I just got that entrepreneurial spirit. Yeah. I don't have that. That's not me. I'm kind of a really analytical person, and so I took the approach, and probably if I had to give any advice, it would be to do your homework. Because so one of the things that happened in this practice I was a part of, so they would do their financials, they would get it on a kind of printed on paper, and they'd get it handed out every single month. And then that was it. They put it in the kind of file storage away. Mm-hmm. And I didn't think that was maybe the most efficient way of doing it. How do you look to see where you're trending, where you're growing? And so I asked them, and they were okay with that, for me to get those financials and then start to create spreadsheets and analysis. And so I would actually present that to them every single month. By doing that, I provided value, but I also got insight into how the business was doing. Mm-hmm. And so when it did come to the time to buy in, I knew more about the practice than anybody else did as far as the finances go. And like you said, there was always the worry, the fear whenever you're making this kind of a big financial, how do you feel comfortable with it? Well, what I did was to be super nerdy about it. I did my own financials, and I said, if I did buy into the practice and it costs this much, what would be my expectations what would I expect to get out of it? What would my distributions be like? And then compare that to my own finances now and see how that affected. basically, like, we were talking earlier, just doing a cash flow analysis, but I did it for myself, and the numbers ended up working out. And so that's what I think it comes down to. Yeah, we all have the same fears, but if you can prove it to yourself that, hey, this is something that's going to work out for me, then I think you feel a lot better about it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So basically you went to this practice, and the first one was in Ankeny, right, in Des Moines, Iowa. And,
Right.
and that was the one you were hired into. And so
Yeah.
you're basically saying, you were there and you said, well, I'm not just going to see patients, I'm going to do a little bit more than that. And so you started to track your own numbers. You started to look at volume and the trends. And so I'm sure you did this, you tell me in a minute, like Google Sheets or something like that, and got some of these numbers in order to, I guess, take an educated risk and really understand what you were getting into for the fun of it, for the nerdy side of it. And then that allowed you to understand, hey, wait, there's a huge opportunity here. So what numbers were you looking at? What specific, you said cash flow, but what else? I mean, what can new graduates who are not even necessarily want to buy out a practice, but are just getting into a practice, what should they track? How do they track it?
And so it's really going to come down to what you want to grow. I took as many numbers as I could. I wanted everything. And so, yes, we look at sales, we look at receipts and all those things, but we're also looking at how many OCTs are we doing. We're trying to figure out what's the exact costs. What should we bill an OCT as? And so what we did is I just went back and did an analysis of, okay, what if we build it this way? What if we build it this way? What would be the difference in there? And versus maybe some expectations on what we'd get as far as pushback on that. So I like more numbers, but when you're coming down to the valuation, you're definitely looking at your receipts, and there's a bunch of different calculations that are going to be out there that you can find. At Ohio State, we had a class, was one of the things you mentioned was, hey, maybe we're not getting as much education there. Ohio State, not bad. We got enough of it where I had a pretty good idea of some of the calculations that I was going to be looking at. I compared it with my own accountant. And what was kind of nice is, so they had evaluation done 3 or 4 years, and that was the one that they kind of were running everything off of. But I kind of knew that number actually was wrong, that I was maybe getting a little bit better deal there.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So the numbers don't lie, no matter what. So 3 practices in Ankeny, you were hired into that one. Next came the one in Johnston, which you bought into, and then the one in Altoona where you opened cold. So without necessarily going into the specifics of each, so you started this first one, but why did you decide to do more? What was it, just an opportunity that you couldn't resist? Did it make sense? How did that work?
So when I bought Ankeny, so there was 2 established partners who were there. So I bought at the doctor who had been there longest, who had retired. So I still had a partner. And so we had, the process of buying into a practice takes longer, and always a lot longer than what you hope or wish. And so we had time to talk about, okay, what's this going to look like whenever this does come through? And we had always seen that there was an opportunity maybe elsewhere for us in the neighboring community called Altoona, which is actually where Facebook just opened their server farm. So kind of one of those another burgeoning communities that's very, very underserved, that we felt like, hey, we can do something here. And we looked at it probably for 2 or 3 years. And once that opportunity came in where I bought in, we really started to look at the feasibility of that. We knew we needed somebody else though to be there, because we were booked full in Ankeny. We're gonna have to bring somebody else on. So we reached out to some other doctors, and one of the doctors came back to us, and he said, if I can buy into you guys as well, I have another opportunity for you. And so he said, hey, there's a doctor who's retiring in Johnston, this other community. If I can make the numbers work for you, would you guys be interested in doing that? Sat down with the accountants again, looked to make sure it cash flowed for us with what we were looking to buy into it as, and it made sense for us to do basically those 2 basically right at the same time.
Got it. Now, did they start as Vision Source practices, or how did that work? And did that help? I mean, would Vision Source versus not Vision Source when buying in this scenario? What would you say?
Definitely helped us for the startup there. Now we're a little bit lucky. So the Vision Source practice in Ankeny, we got to carry some of that forward as being an early adopter of the Vision Source name. So we got a little bit of help there. So for us, Vision Source definitely makes sense as far as from how much of the gross you have to pay back. So it definitely made sense for us to do that. And it helps with the upfront cost. So we had trouble in Altoona initially. So Altoona, turns out it was a very, very high IMED population. It's not something that we took in Ankeny. So we actually reached out to IMED, and they said, oh yeah, we want to practice like yours in our community. Go ahead and credential with us. And we got denied. And we're like, how do you deny us? Wait a minute. we had a conversation. You wanted us. We ran that through Vision Source, and like instantly we were credentialed through it. It was strange, but yeah, it's just so much easier to run it through Vision.
So having that power behind it really seemed to, because I remember credentialing out here in San Diego, and it was a nightmare. But we if you've got the power on your side, you can help to push those things along, because just getting on a phone call and trying to talk with a customer service representative on credentialing is like insanity. So what other things, I guess, why, in addition to that, what else do they do for the practice? Do they help out with the dispensary side, with the management side of exams? How else do they support you?
So they definitely help as far as the upfront costs. So you get discounted rates on lenses, some of the kind of startup material that they'll definitely help you out with. As being an established practice, we maybe didn't rely on that as much because we had some of that already built in for us. But marketing tools, they'll definitely help a new practice out with that stuff.
Got it. So, I mean, lots of people want to be in your shoes for sure. Hey guys, we're back. I think that's a problem on our end here with the Wi-Fi. Apologize. Hey Jesse, you back?
I'm back.
Hey man, sorry about that. Wi-Fi went out, it looks like. That's what the problem with them removing ports on these MacBooks. They don't give you an Ethernet cable anymore. So for people who want to be in your shoes, I mean, what's the advice there? How do they get started at such an endeavor? How do they get right into practice like that?
Oh, so I mean, the first thing, obviously, like I said, I mean, do your homework. If this is something that you're really into, know more about the practice than anybody else does. If you can get the access to it, because nobody's going to look out for you the way that you will. I mean, you can have accountants look at it, you can have lawyers look at it, but it's going to help the most when you're the one who's invested, you've done the homework, you know what's going on. If you feel like it makes sense, take the risk. That would be what I would say. So prove it to yourself too, that yeah, this makes sense. And I think you just sleep easier at night knowing this is the investment that I made, that you did the best information possible.
Got it. What was the most difficult part about all of it? You know, and I guess let's put on one side the aspect of buying in, and the other side the aspect of opening cold. What's the most difficult part, and maybe something you're still challenged with today?
So probably the biggest thing, I was kind of telling you the story earlier when we were talking. One of the biggest challenges with opening cold is the expectations of it. So I was telling about my day. So when I started Monday morning in our Altoona clinic. It's the brand new one. We started up cold. And so I saw 2 people. And in the afternoon, I worked at our Eyecare clinic, which is more established, and saw 12 people. It's just coming to grips with that's not failure in the morning. That was success. That's growth. And sometimes you have to look at it over time, because what's been really easy and hard, it's kind of hard for us, is to say, are we growing the right way? Do we need to change anything? If we saw 0 people that day, the goal is to say, okay, we got to scrap this. We got to do something completely different. But to have the patience to say, okay, this is slow, this is growing. Once you start to get more of those data points, that's when I think it helps you make the decision. So try not to make too many decisions off those small data points, those 1 or 2 things as you're growing.
Got it. And now, what was the main thing that kicked you guys into gear for opening cold? You had these 2. It made sense. The data was there to support it. It sounds like you had the same party involved in both practices. So, what made you go this third route?
Some of it is the challenge and the fun of it. I think it's mostly what it is. We were talking as a group of owners about a month ago, and we were talking about who gets to be in what clinic and how long a time they are. And they asked me, do you feel like you're wasting too much time because you're so busy somewhere else? Do you feel like you're wasting your time being in the newer clinics? And I said, no, I want to be here. It's more fun. It's more fun to grow it. Starting from something fresh from scratch, and you get to take it and see where it goes. The practice looks the way that I want it to look. We look at our lenses. Patients are already in lenses that we want them to be in. It looks like the practice that you want, and that's the most fun part about it.
How do you guys go about acquisition of new patients in such a startup cold type of environment?
It's been tough, and maybe it's not something that we've always gotten right. In Ankeny, we did some outreach with some school nurses around town to kind of let them know, hey, this is what we do, and this is the service that we can provide. That worked because they were my school nurses growing up. I had some connections there, so it made it fun. It's been a little bit tough in a newer community. We're trying to break into those. So starting with the Chamber of Commerce, we've gone to Chamber of Commerce events where we've, as 3 owners, presented, hey, this is what we do. This is what we do that's different. We've done outreach as just a practice entity in itself with endocrinologists. We've had them come through our office, say, hey, this is what we do. With Vision Source, and especially Vision Source in Iowa, we actually have a partnership with Unity Point, a clinic around here where we service their diabetic patients, and we want to show them that, hey, we know what we're doing. And so we have them in, we show them the technology that we have and how we can treat things, and that just helps our stature with practices around there. So we've gotten pretty good referrals already from clinics in Altoona.
So it's really just a constant push, and like you said, you're going door to door, it sounds like, provider by provider, and really trying to just contact and have touch points with everyone. It's interesting. We did a survey recently on about 300 new graduates, and specifically we asked what would or did prevent you from starting a private practice. And 67% said debt, 13% said lack of business management skills, 11% said identifying a desirable location, 9% said access to financing. So can you touch on some of this? Is this a limiting belief that a lot of people have, especially on the debt component? How does the money side work into this? Because I'm sure you get student loans. We all do.
Yeah. No, I would agree on all those. I think they're all great reasons. I had them all. There are ways that you can structure it, though, where it doesn't work out too terribly. We have one clinic that we bought on contract. So based on kind of the revenue that is produced, it affects how much we pay in. And it doesn't feel so bad then. If you have a great month, okay, you paid more, but you had the revenue there to do that. Whenever I bought out the first doctor, we had it seller financed. And so came to terms there that, you know, it was really nice having that relationship of, this is what I feel like I can do. Is that going to work out for you? And the doctor who had a relationship said, yeah. And so that helps a little bit too, is that you can structure the deals so that you feel a little bit more comfortable with it. If you want to backload it a little bit more, because you'll have more finances hopefully by then. Certainly those are those opportunities that you can look for. There are ways that you can make it work. Like I said, if you do the research, set it up how you feel like you want and see what happens.
Got it. Got it. Hey, by the way, everyone can ask ask questions and comment live on the YouTube page where this is hosted, and we'll see them and ask them live. So, Will Toe, I saw you gave us a thumbs up. We need more, Will. Cool. Okay. Now, what about just in general? What was the biggest learning curve for you? How did you start learning about like medical reimbursements and getting codes denied and the coding and billing side? What'd you do on that side to expand the medical side of the practice and really, wrap your hands around some of the stuff that's not taught in optometry school, specifically coding and billing and medical?
I think what was the best part is having bought into an established practice where they were certainly doing it, and we had the staff there that was definitely capable of it. We just needed to expand kind of their knowledge base just a little bit for them to take on just a little bit more. We have a billing person that's dedicated to just doing that, but they're doing it for 3 clinics now instead of 1. It's also about having great staff who can do that for you.
And what'd you guys do to find great staff?
Some of it is our billing person, whenever I came on, was doing tech workup, but mostly just doing scribing. And so some of that, hopefully education. I mean, hopefully she feels that way. There are resources on Vision Source that do help you with that, where there's training involved, but we worked as much as we could together with them to kind of grow their skill set, where they felt comfortable with. If things get denied, we learn together. Mm-hmm. And I feel really, really confident where we're at from a billing standpoint right now, because our staff person, Katie, is doing a really, really great job for us.
How do you manage financial side of it? I mean, you're a numbers guy. That's what got you into some of this. Mm-hmm. How are you looking at financial statements and tracking some of these things? I mean, how are you keeping track of just the craziness that goes on? I mean, you said some days you'll have 2 patients and obviously you got time to wrap your head around it, but at the other practice you had quite a few. I mean, what's the game plan to wrap your head around all the numbers and all the moving parts, as specific as you can get and as as tip oriented for the people watching?
So I have a Google Sheets that I set up. It takes a lot of man hours. If you don't love making spreadsheets, I'm sorry. So what I did was I just built it myself. This is what I want to see. These are all the numbers that I tracked. I made it into a Google spreadsheet, and then I physically take the numbers. So we're on Revolution EHR, and my absolute favorite thing about it is that I can dig into the reports and get those numbers, and fairly quickly. So far, now that I've gotten into it, it doesn't take too much time for me to get all this kind of cracked up and working. So on Google Drive, I have probably 6 or 7 Google Sheets. I have them starred so I can get to them really quickly. I've run the reports so many times on Revolution, I get to them and pull those numbers really, really quick. So I'm getting not too bad at it. It maybe takes about an hour or 2, some time on a weekend. My daughter goes to sleep at 8. That's my time. After 8, I'm good. Where I can kind of get into those numbers there.
Got it. Yeah, that's important. Yeah, I remember, especially if you're on paper, this kind of stuff's going to be more difficult. And so it pays to have, a practice management system that's going to really help you out. And so, some of the things you might want to track, are you guys looking at, second pair sales, transitions, AR? I mean, how are you looking at some of the things that really drive business? And I guess, is your dispensary a big part of the business for you guys in terms of revenue? And do you intend to support that? Do you intend to transition a little bit more towards different revenue sources? And I guess, how does that all translate to giving a message for the new graduates out there so they can kind of follow in those footsteps?
So, we kind of talked earlier about where we're trying to position ourselves going forward. We definitely talked about kind of those relationships that we're establishing with those other physicians. So we see ourselves as becoming more and more of a medical practice, but we definitely don't want to forget about the optical side of it. One of the things that we kind of see as we track those numbers is our per patient average when it comes to spectacles. That's, I think, where we try and say this is the number that we track. we have goals that we set up for each one of our staff members, and our specific goal when it relates to our optical is that number. It's what percent of patients that come through the door are getting glasses. We are higher in the new clinics than we are in the established one. So you'd almost think it'd be the inverse, but what we found is you just get a lot of time to kind of establish those relationships. And so one of the things that we're looking as we go back into Ankeny is, what can we do to try and, it's tough because like you said, we're busier, we're running more time. Is how can we be more efficient in establishing a relationship and the time with the patients to answer all their questions? I find myself, I don't like to think of myself as a salesman, and I would hate to think of myself as a salesman. What I want to do, though, is to educate them as thoroughly as possible, to take all of their pain points. And I think if we do that, I think it will reflect in the numbers that we'll have enough answers to their questions where we find that a certain amount of people will need spectacles. One of the things I'm really excited about, if we talk about SLR for a little bit, so I got my little lenses on here. I popped them in. I had LASIK. I don't really need to see here, but I got the Prevency on it to try and help with the reflection that I'm getting back from Matt. Eisen, I know, right? Eisen's actually been really kind of a cool thing that we brought into the practice here. A lot of people are really excited about it. You know, our entire staff is wearing those lenses, and so I think if they're really excited about it, it's easy to pass that on to the patients.
So tell us a little bit about those. I'm happy to go that direction. You know, I think there's a lot of people unfamiliar with lens technology because it's often just passed off to the opticians in the practice. So give us some background on those, and how are you using products, and in this case, lenses, to be a practice builder?
Yeah, I mean, you and I, we're talking on a computer. I mean, this is crazy, right? And so much of our world is right here. And so I think it's an easy conversation to have with people is, how are you doing on a computer? It'd be surprising probably to you and me that somebody wouldn't say, oh, man, after a while, my eyes are just done. I'm ready to be done with it. And it doesn't have to be people in presbyopia. It even happens before. My wife's an accountant. She spends all of her day on the computer. She's -12 script, so she's got other issues as well. Yeah. But so we talked to her about, you know, 2012, like Gunner. She's like, I mean, I don't really want to do that. I have like a career. I can't be wearing these like yellow. So it's really exciting for something like Prevency to come out, which gives that same effect. I was talking to a patient today. He's like, hey, I had these Gunners back in 2012. I want to do that again. I was like, what about these glasses right here? They give you the exact same effect, but they don't have to have the yellow tint on. And he was so excited that this was even a possibility. He spends 12, 14 hours a day on a computer. He's got 4 screens going. This is something that could really, really help him out. This is this whole world, and we could make it hopefully just a little bit better, more comfortable for him. So I think it's exciting because you have hopefully a solution that could solve some answers. Eisen's great for that because it's got the kind of blue blocking already built into it. I always tell patients it's like, you know, the night shift on your phone, but it's not just for your eyes. But you get a little built-in ad on top of it, just a little bit of help for that computer where your eyes don't have to work so hard.
Yeah, and that's interesting because it's a good lens for emmetropes like myself. When I was practicing, I did a lot of Prevency. It was a big hallmark for our practice, and we actually did a lot of content around it. I wrote blog articles about blue light and things like that, and it really led to a lot of very interesting patients coming in who are looking for a solution that could never find one. And it was a big practice builder because we kind of built it around like holistic health in a way. We talked about how to, you know, everything from sleep and, you know, amount of light from your device to just healthy ways to manage your vision. And, you know, we kind of just this non-pharmaceutical route to healthy eyes, and people really loved it, and it got them to listen. And so it really was actually a very good lens for us. What other lens technology are you excited about while we're on the topic? And then we got a question here I'll ask after.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited about what you kind of described is that I feel like whenever you can get that into the patient's information into their hands a little bit earlier, that's when it really, really helps. It's not you bringing it up, it's they're bringing it to you, and then you can have a really great conversation about it. Other great technologies, you know, Eisen's the one that kind of comes up to, like, sure. I feel like is really a difference maker. That's doing something different. You know, I feel like our progressives that we have now, you know, with the kind of S-series lens, we are getting too many pushback as far as a lot of remakes. And I was just kind of thinking our remakes, we were something we would actually used to track were remakes and why we were getting the certain kind of remakes. And I haven't looked at that forever just because I haven't felt like I've been running into it a lot.
Yeah, that's interesting. We were talking about remakes this weekend and how that could really like demoralize some of the staff and things like that, and push away from lens choices. And so it's interesting. How do you find that relationship between just like making sure your staff is happy and that they're, happy with what you're sending their way in terms of prescriptions? You guys really look at the lens choices you're making to make sure, hey, this is working. Patients are happy. Staff is happy. They don't have to deal with remakes because they're the ones who have to get the screaming patient in front.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things we did, we just packaged the lenses. We took choices and we narrowed them down. We said, okay, this is what works. I mean, anti-reflective coating, it's on all of our lenses. So our AIR is pretty high, but we just said that's the lens package that we have. I don't know if many patients get excited about talking about lenses. I mean, we might, and if we should, but they want to know what the frame is. And so if we can limit the lens cost where, hey, we're our lens conversation to something that's a little bit more simple, a little bit more easy to digest. Here are the packages. If you wanted to put like a good, better, best on it, that you can, but just keep it really, really easy. It's one of the things that we found has definitely made staff happier. It's not as many choices.
Yeah, no, very interesting. Yeah, definitely a similar experience. So one of the questions here, did you know when you started work at that first practice that you would eventually be buying in, or did that conversation come after being there for a period of time? And guys, feel free to ask questions in the YouTube chat. Super easy, just comment away.
I would say it had been kind of hinted at. I never took it super serious. One of the things you may hear or you may run into is that a lot of doctors will kind of throw that out there as kind of a carrot, dangle it in front of people, and then take it away. And I kind of heard that happened to maybe 3 or 4 other people who kind of came before me. So I went in not necessarily with that expectation, but maybe as a possibility, I would say.
Got it. And how'd that conversation start out? I mean, when you started having it, did you knock, knock, knock? Hey, I want to buy your practice. See you later. I mean, that's like the stuff that everyone wants to know, those little details. How does that look?
I can't think of one conversation where I remember, like you said, knocking on the door saying, hey, let's talk about it. It came up, I felt like fairly organically and fairly slowly, like a dance is kind of going around each other.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's like the way it should be, I feel like.
Yeah. The reason I have the hardest time remembering is that so I started in July, and I want to say by like January the next year was something that we were talking about. And shortly after that is when we got lawyers involved. We were starting to say, okay, what do we think this is actually worth? And a year and a half later is when everything came through. So there was a long gap between when the initial conversations happened and when we finally settled on it. And so all I remember is the thing in the middle, which was this long grind to get to the end point.
Got it. Yeah. That's the tough part, but that's the benefit of having a professional involved in the process. Cool. Yeah. So question. Yeah, it's a really good one. How does your income change when you start buying in? I mean, is it, hey, I've got to sacrifice dip and you get the benefit in the long run, or what is that like?
I would say it hasn't changed. It hasn't gotten better, it hasn't gotten worse. It's the same. Right? That's one of the things that I kind of factored in. When I looked at how I was going to cash flow early, it was probably, I didn't think I would ever go negative. I didn't see any scenario where we would go negative. So my accountant, when we were kind of wearing our practice after that, he said, well, you have to expect some decline. Based on the numbers I saw and I ran, I did not expect that at all. And so since that time, since I bought in, we were actually at a 10% growth when we lost a doctor who had a 30-year established practice, basically. So, and I had that kind of factored in, but no scenario did I see where I'd be losing. I didn't really see a scenario where we'd just be killing it. And the reason being is that we have these 2 other arms that we're basically trying to support with the other ones. So they've actually hit their break-even point in July. And so hopefully going forward, I mean, that's one of the reasons why you want to do this is that, yeah, that income does creep up. But right now it's level and right where I anticipate and kind of where I hope right now.
So I'm assuming eventually you're going to hit this tipping point where it's like, whoa, 3 practices, 3 busy practices. You can't be in 3 places at once unless you can. And then if so, let me know and we'll conquer the world together. But, what's the plan there? Obviously, I'm assuming you're going to hire on people, but are you thinking that far down the line? And tell me what that's like.
So it's it's fun having partners in this where you can kind of have those conversations and talk about what the future looks like to you. One of the big things that we're going to run into is how do we have these 3 different practices and how do we brand them? How do we start to, I think we're going to have to struggle to talk about being bigger, to being one entity there and having all these different names. And so those are the conversations, the things that we're kind of looking forward to in the future is the things that we have to solve is how do we get these 3 to coordinate just a little bit better? They tend to feel like 3 different practices right now. They should in the future feel more like one kind of entity, or that's what we're going towards. Definitely looking to hire hopefully soon. That'd be nice.
Yeah. Well, shameless plug here, covalentcareers.com, free job listing for your first listing. So yeah, go ahead and give me an email, Jesse. We'll make sure you get what you need. Now, when it comes to, I think at SUNY at least, great optometry school, but we learned very few optical lessons. And in both practices, or almost 4 practices I've worked at, all private practices, it was a real rude awakening for me in learning optical-based lessons, whether not just practice management, dispensary stuff, but even just about technology, about progressives, about how it all worked. I mean, what are some of those things that were somewhat of a rude awakening for you in the optical and to learning some of those things? You have a couple tips you can hand out?
Like you said, one of the things that it does feel like is it feels like in contact lenses, you got more control. You get more kind of time with the patients. Hey, you're kind of directing how things are going. And probably as optometrists, we'd like to have that control, knowing what's going on. And sometimes you feel like whenever they go to the optical and you're seeing, 20 or 30 people that day, I just have a great feel for what's going on in there. That's where I like having conversations and feel. So we had a staff meeting last Friday and, I got the chance to sit down with our optical and talk about, hey, we got coming into December, we're coming into HSA time. What can we do to really capture this moment and have a really great conversation with them about, hey, here's some things we can do. Again, I always like to look at it as an education. How can we educate our patients? If there's anything out there that we can maybe solve the problems just a little bit better.
Yeah, no. If it's so I guess there's 2 sides of it. There's your own education, there's patient education. I guess the third side is staff education. Are you having conversations with staff? What are you doing quarterly meetings? What do you guys talk about in those things? And even around the optical, if you want to blend that into that answer too.
So we have monthly meetings, and here's maybe the thing that we do that's different. So we actually have a consultant who comes in who helps us with kind of not necessarily staff training. So she's more of a kind of a business consultant. She actually had almost no experience with optometry practice, and then just happened to get hooked up with a friend of ours optometry practice, then ours, and a bunch of other ones. Mm-hmm. And so now has this kind of optometry goal consulting. She's like, I don't know anything about optometry. But she's good at goal selection, getting, talking to our staff, encouraging them, looking for, are you having any trouble? Because they're going to come to her more than they're going to come to us. If there's anything that we can do. So we actually have somebody hired to do that for us because we found out we aren't very good at it. We're not very good at hiring. We're not very, good at, giving the hugs to everybody. It's great to have somebody else there to kind of help us with that.
Yeah, the process of just what you're describing is something that's universal. And if you look at that whiteboard behind us, I mean, we're on that thing every single day here at Covalent and New Grad, and it's very much a learn as you go type of process. And I like that you said goal oriented. I think it's really important to set very specific goals and hold people accountable. It's easy to just kind of let things pass, but I mean, man, it's almost December, the year's almost over, and it's like, look at how many goals kind of slip by. And, just for a tip out there, I think it's important for practices, whether you're starting cold or you're just an employee in a practice, is really try to get into quarterly meeting structure where it's an hour, you guys sit down at a table, you write up some goals, and you measure as you go. And that's going to be helpful if you're an employee and negotiating a raise and things like that. But if you want to see growth, you've got to look for growth and monitor growth. It's important to be diligent with those things. A couple questions here. So from the same individual as before, does Vision Source have any resources for ODs looking for practices that may be for sale or coming up for sale? Do you know any of those, Jesse?
I'm not sure if there's anything specifically, but I know of Vision Source Iowa. So we tried to do an outreach where we had an event where graduates, interested people, we all kind of said, hey, here's a time where we can all get together and talk. So I don't know if there's something that's universal to Vision Source, but there's something that definitely I think Vision Source entities, the smaller groups of them, will look for those kind of opportunities. And something that we've done. So we sent one of our partners to that meeting to talk to potential, even though we're not necessarily looking for anything right now because we just don't have the space. It's something we're interested in talking in the future.
Yeah, it's a really great question, and I'm almost positive they do, and I can't remember the link off the top of my head. And so what I would suggest to do is, and I'm not even sure of the link, but I know on newgradoptometry.com, I believe on this particular webinar, the Vision Source logo there is actually linked to a page that's dedicated for new graduates, and there's a form there, and all you got to do is fill that out and direct that question towards them. But for the asker of that question, if you want to shoot me an email at info@newgradoptometry.com, I'll personally respond and get back to you and link you up with the folks over there who can help. So I'd love to help out with that. Another question, did you get an appraisal for each practice before buying in, Jesse, or what was that like? Did you have to have it professionally appraised?
So we had, in the first practice I bought into, that they had Williams come through and appraise it. That appraisal was 3 or 4 years old. So it's something you could certainly want to. And but based on numbers I was running, I felt pretty good about where I stood, where I didn't need another appraisal. I probably didn't want it because I knew the numbers might not work in my favor. We did the same thing then in Johnson, where we just looked at our raw numbers, and we had our accountant kind of run through it, and it agreed with kind of where we were feeling. So we didn't get an appraisal there either. And then starting up a new practice, we just ran.
Got it. Yeah, that's not as necessary now. When you're looking at an appraisal, are you just looking at revenue running for the last few years, the current year, and then taking a percentage of that as the value for the practice? Do you have a simple formula, or is it not that simple?
So yeah, basically I'm going to start with the 3-year weighted average of, you could do either one if you wanted to, just kind of remember the numbers, revenue versus receipts. That just gives you a quick idea of kind of where to stand. You'll look at a Williams report, a Williams appraisal will have 3 or 4 different ones, and they'll kind of average the 4 at the end of it. So everybody's got their little different quirks and ways to do it, but I like 3-year weighted average. You weight what happened more recently versus what happened before. So if a doctor's, on the way down, they're declining, they're easing off, which, retiring doctors are prone to doing, taking a little bit more easy as we go. You weigh that as kind of, this is the more recency here. This is what I'm actually buying.
Got it. So you get those numbers. Those are revenue numbers. Now, the actual value, is the value a percentage of that, or a multiple of that, or what's that final conclusion number look like? So
to me, it looks like a number. I've seen it as percentage if you want to. But for me, at least what I was kind of running there, I was just looking at raw numbers, seeing how much I felt it was worth.
Got it. Okay. And did you hire an attorney to draft individual asset purchase agreements for each practice? That was another question we have there.
Yep. So I had an attorney and accountant. So that's the team that you need.
Yeah, got it. And did like, what's the paperwork like? I mean, what kind of different, how many, not how many pages, but there's, separate types of agreements, equity agreement. How does all that look from a high level?
So we had for I want to say Johnson right now, just because there's probably more involved. So we had to have a purchase agreement, then we had to have an employee agreement that was signed concurrently, and then a lease agreement that was signed concurrently. So you have all these documents that have to get signed at the same time because you need them all to work together. If one falls through, then the deal falls through. So we had those 3 documents coming through. In Ankeny, we had a purchase agreement, an employee agreement, and a termination that the other doctor had to sign. I'm trying to think of anything else.
It's funny because I think as a viewer, it seems like, oh my God, this is the most difficult thing in the world, but you're so laid back about it. And it just seems like, is it a fair assessment to say that once you're actually doing it with professionals by your side, it's not as bad as what it seems like from the outside? Or is it bad, or is it worse? Or, what's that like?
Does this, every single day, all he does is business purchase agreements. So it's like a generic form that you get where he just changes a few things. So yeah, it definitely helps to have that, the expertise with you, because it isn't really too much of a big deal. I mean, you read it like 800 times, so like what the 6th word in each paragraph is, just to make sure. But yeah, for them, this is just another day.
Got it.
It's like
Let me put the thumbs up emoji for the question askers out there. Gotta keep the emojis flowing. Cool. Back to the dispensing flow. you have a patient in your chair, you're listening to the case history, you're getting the information you need, you're making recommendations for all sorts of stuff, dry eye, this and that. When it comes to the flow of prescribing, what does that look like? How are you going from taking the patient need, prescribing a particular visual solution, in this case lenses, and what does that flow look like from the exam room out to the optician, passing that off? And is that flow important in what I'm assuming is a core revenue for the practice of the optical dispensary?
What's fantastic is in the small clinics, it's really, really easy. You have that conversation. I like to use a lot of visuals, so I got a couple pamphlets that I'm ready to rock on. So I feel good about that. My patients have a really core idea of what they're kind of getting into. In the smaller clinics, I'm walking them out to the optical. That optical patient I hand them off to is the tech who worked them up. So they already have a relationship. They already kind of know what they're looking for as well. And it seems really, really seamless. The thing that we're struggling with the most is in the bigger clinic, is because I don't have the time to walk them all the way to the other side of the building like I do in the smaller clinics. And so the handoff just hasn't felt maybe as seamless. Where I have a tech, I try and repeat as much of the conversation with my tech as possible as they walk them out to the exam room. Hey, this is the thing that we talked about. This is what we're feeling good about. This is the expectation that we're looking for. By the time they get to the optical, what I worry is how much of that do I lose? So that's the thing we're really, really focused on in our anchoring. It's I think a problem area that we're trying to address is to see if we can hand off just a little bit better. I know it's a problem, but it's easier whenever you got a smaller practice and I can do a direct handoff than a larger one.
Yeah, no, I love that, and you're honest with it. We've done some content.
I'm standing here that I'm an expert on everything, or an expert on anything really. We have the same struggles that I think other practice would.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, the fact that you're on this hangout and doing this is actually the piece that has made you successful. You're willing to just say yes to a lot of things, and yeah, you do your analysis, but the fact that you're willing to jump in and just be very active is probably a big cause for your success. And yeah, we definitely. I mean, man, we don't know what we're doing over here, but we figure it out. And that's what separates us, is that we are not afraid to figure it out. We are not afraid to fall. We are not afraid to be under pressure. And it sounds like you guys are really in a similar situation over there, which you'll be successful.
I think that's great. And I really do think the fake it till you make it thing, especially if there are a lot of optometry students on here, it's real. Like, we all do it. Like, when you start practicing for the first time, you're like not sure. Everybody goes through it. When you're buying a practice, I don't know.
Yeah.
We all kind of fake it till we make it, or just continue faking it. I don't know.
Well, that's the interesting part. If you really have very lofty growth goals and really high aspirations, you're going to be faking it for a while. I mean, think what Elon Musk thinks. He thinks he's still faking it, but he's, light years ahead of all of us, but he's not happy till he's on Mars.
Right.
Now, just on more of that doctor-driven dispensing topic, you guys can Google doctor-driven dispensing and the keyword new grad optometry and see a video that we shot on this with Dr. Eric White at San Diego, who's, taught me doctor-driven dispensing. It's a great film on it. Another question here. Since purchasing, have your time commitments increased greatly? I'm a mom of 2 years old and of a 2-year-old and a 2-month-old. So that's definitely a consideration for me. Wondering if I should wait longer.
So I'll tell you, my wife right now is downstairs in the basement. She's an accountant. This is one of her busy seasons. She's working way more hours than I am. She's about 80 hours a week. And we have a 2-year-old. Time's tough. There's not a lot. If I get an hour and my kid, it's awesome. It doesn't happen all that often. I don't know if I would say you need to wait because of that. Depending on how you manage your time, I find it, as I'm getting better at it, like I said, as I get faster and better at it, I was spending a lot of time at home kind of running through numbers just to make myself feel better. I've gotten better at it. I've gotten quicker at it. And I don't feel like I have to do there's still time out of the office. I just feel like it doesn't have to be as much as I've gotten into it a little bit more. So I would say, yeah, it's tough and it's rough and there's not a lot of time, but I think it is doable.
Yeah, I love that advice, and I could speak on it a little bit from the standpoint not necessarily of an optometry practice, but just being busy. I think it's really deceiving as to what our time is worth, and a lot of times we continue to take on tasks that are not worth our time, and we assume to do that. We assume we have to take them on, and this is simple things. This is simple things like doing your own laundry or cleaning your own home. or, you know, even some business things, which you can outsource to freelancers or to a bookkeeper or something like that. We tend to like retain these tasks because we feel like we have to hold on to them. Yet your per unit time, like what you can make in that amount of time that you're wasting on these pointless things, is much greater, and the ROI on that time is much greater. So, you know, to the person who asked that question, I would say make a list of everything you can offload. I mean, you know, bring your laundry to the local laundromat, or things at home and things like that that you can offload. And sure, you're going to have to pay for it, but that's going to be an investment in bringing an ROI to the practice where you can spend a lot of time making much more, you know, multiple effect on your per unit time. Things at the practice. I mean, Jesse, you know, you've got some free time now, but what are some of the like first things you're looking to hand off to someone else that you just don't want to manage yourself because it's not worth your time? Your time is worth, say, $500 an hour, $1,000 an hour, whatever it is for the practice. And it's like, well, why would I do books? Because I could be making $2,000 an hour, or whatever the number is, but I'm wasting it on this, what I could be, you know, shipping off to someone for $12 an hour.
I think a lot of that has been our staff time, and you were kind of talking about our office meetings. That consultant that we have is almost effectively running our office meetings, because I used to kind of every day right before a meeting, have to spend time. Hey, here's the outline. Here's what we want to talk about. I mean, I like to get into the numbers a little bit, but running those office meetings can be tough. And especially if you're not doing it the right way, what we found was staff wasn't getting anything out of it. Now that we have somebody to kind of help us out with that, they seem to be running a lot better. We're on focus, we're on message a little bit more. And I think our staff seems to get more out of it, or at least when we've had them respond to surveys, they say they do. It was kind of interesting. You mentioned the at home unloading things. You know, one of the pieces of advice I got when we had our child was from our pediatrician, and they're like, get somebody to clean your house. Like, it's not worth it. Don't waste the time with it. Like, if you have weekends, that's awesome. You don't usually get it. Have fun. Like, don't worry about that stuff. And so that's something we do. We have somebody come in, you know, once every other week. I think it's $100, $120 for us to have somebody kind of come through, but it's worth it to us because I don't have to worry about that, you know, on the weekend when I want to be with my wife and my kid and doing stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do to just, it's just so elusive to think that we have to be doing all these things, where we can save tremendous amounts of time. And so I can't push for that enough, that, you know, it's almost always not a good time. You know, you push it off today and sure, you know, there's going to be something else that creeps up. Now there's, you know, sometimes it's the elephant in a room. It just doesn't make any sense. But sometimes if you're teetering on, is now a good time or not, and you can't really decide, I would, you know, do like Jesse says. Jesse said yes to the webinar pretty quickly, and sometimes you've just got to go for it. And there's a lot you can read on this topic. I mean, there's a lot around time management. Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek, which is a little bit, you know, of a deviation from where you're going to be thinking about an optometry practice, but he talks about how to really make things much more efficient. 4-Hour Workweek is a New York Times bestseller. You know, things like listening to business management books on Audible as you are doing whatever your daily tasks are, driving to and from work or whatever it is. Get an Audible membership that's $15 a month. And, you know, my Audible has taught me more in the last year than I have in a lifetime around business management. And so, you know, little hacks like that are really probably the only way to succeed, especially when you've got 2 kids, you know, new family and things like that. And you're going to be open with other folks in your family about, hey, look, I'm embarking on this. This is my #1 priority, and I'm going to need your support. Do I have your support? And that's going to be a big commitment, because there's going to be blood, sweat, and tears along the way. You know, nothing great comes without some level of sacrifice. And so you've got to get motivated. You got to get everyone committed to it. Jesse, what's that timeline that you guys anticipate to be out of the weeds a little bit? Maybe we can insight on that.
As far as the practice goes?
Yeah.
So like I said, break even we hit for the other 2 locations in July or August, one of those 2. So if we continue on that growth, I've been really excited about the new practice and kind of where it's been almost taking off here. So I guess I'm not trying to say I don't know, but I don't want to say this is what an endpoint looks like. You know, break even's a pretty obvious one. That's the one that feels good. And it's like, okay, well, now it can support itself a little bit. But I don't want to set this is the goal. This is what it's going to look like, because I don't know. I hope it goes great, but I don't want to. Yeah, I guess I don't have any expectation of what I want it to look like at this amount of time.
Got it. Yeah, and you know, I'm sure Vision Source has some resources around that. And if you are thinking about opening cold, Eyecare Advisors, the letter I, careadvisorsllc.com, is a really, Eric and Bob are phenomenal when it comes to cold starts, and you know, for you know, for what you can essentially compensate them there and give to the business, you can get so much back in return as far as smoothness of opening that practice cold. So back to some of the questions here. You know, when it comes to staff training, Jesse, have you guys utilized the SLR brand sales program? I believe it is, where they come in and help train you guys. Have you done anything around that?
So SLR experts came into the Des Moines Metro a month ago, and time-wise, it just didn't work out for us to do that. And there was, I think it's a great program. And, you know, I heard good things. We had, you know, friends kind of go through it. There were some things, you know, we have our set goal system, and then we're worried about kind of changing or mixing that up. It's certainly something that we're going to look in the future at. You know, our SLR lab rep kind of bugged us a little bit about, hey, I think this would be really great for you. It's something that we'll look about in the future. There's definitely that opportunity. And what was great, it was free.
Yep.
But it's staff time out of the office, and so that's kind of not really free. But yeah, there are definitely those opportunities that are there.
Got it. Now, what are you doing overall with just training? Are you making sure that your staff has kind of like professional goals themselves to, you know, keep up so that you're not the one doing all the work? I mean, what are they doing to grow? How do you encourage their growth?
So like we said, we have their personal sales goals and things like that, and everyone has kind of their own. As far as growth goes, we utilize the Vision Source learning, especially early. It's one of those things that kind of falls away with time, where we were like saying, okay, this is what I want you to learn. I'm going to assign you these courses, which, you know, in Vision Source that you have that opportunity to do it. It's certainly a great opportunity. And now you remind me of it. It's like, oh yeah, we need to be doing that again. But we just kind of lost touch on it a little bit, but that was actually really fantastic. There was a webinar that just came on about Xperio for Vision Source SLR that just came out.
Yep.
That I ran through, and then I sent to our optical to take a look at as well. I'm thinking of. So there are some organic things that kind of come up, but now I think of it, Vision Source learning, which was great, something I'm going to write down, look at again.
Yeah, no, totally. When it comes to like 2017, how are you guys approaching that year? Is there anything that you look at on a yearly basis that's like, hey, turning over a new leaf, it's, you know, both, you know, are you get to opening another practice, or what does 2017 look like for you? How do you plan for that?
God, I hope we're not opening another one. 2017, I'm excited about. Got 1 year in at each location. I'm just excited to see where it is more than anything. I mean, we'll set our growth goals. So like we said, we have quarterly goals that we want our staff to hit. There is an office goal that we always establish, that we want to see this much growth over receipts from last year. It tends to vary. So I try and look at each number each month and say where I expect us to be. So there'll be staff goals that we'll have on a quarterly basis to try and grow the practices. As far as what's exciting about 2017 is that now you have returning patients. You know, as a new grad starting out, you see the benefits of the returning patients. It makes it a little bit easier. You got the patients in the lens that you want them to be in. They've already heard their conversations. They start to take on your view of how vision should be. And so that's the funnest part, of seeing patients back for the second, third time. So that's probably the most fun thing I'm looking for, is that now we're going to be seeing returning patients.
That's super interesting. I've never heard anyone say that before. You've got patients coming in, adopting your view of how vision should be. I never thought of it that way. Tell me, dive deeper into that, and how you as a doctor, you're very impressionable on your patients. Tell me more about that.
It's really something that's apparent to you when you take over for a doctor who practice for 30 years, that the patients come in with an expectation of this is how things should go. And if you're a little bit different, you got a little bit of a different idea, there's a lot of pushback that you get until you introduce your idea. Or I always find myself having to kind of prove it, to say, okay, let me show you, this is what I think it, and this is why I think it. And like I said, I love showing visuals to try and get patients kind of to think my way. But then they have an expectation of, this is what you should be looking at, and this is, you know, dilation. I don't know what it is, but everybody comes in, they've never been dilated before. Like, never. And you're going, really? You've never been dilated ever? Well, this is why it's really important for us to take a look back there. That's your retina. That's what you see with. You know, if I don't look back there, how am I giving you a really great eye exam? And so then you just don't get the feedback coming back there because they know that, hey, that's the standard of care that I should be receiving. And so, yeah, that's where I think it feels better. It's just the conversation seems so much easier.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting. Yeah, I remember those days, good old days. What are you guys, looking for in the future? What are you looking out for? How do you deal with, I was just online today. I probably saw 3 different ads for online glasses manufacturing, contact lenses by mail. Do you use those things as a differentiator to make yourself stand out, or how do you compete in what a lot of people are afraid of is the future of eye care's online version?
I mean, you always get probably a little bit nervous saying this, but what I think people like, and especially when you're picking out glasses or you're picking out contact lenses, there's just not a lot of information that's out there. We were talking, there was a struggle of information just to get it to optometrists even, that patients also don't have that information. If you send them out into, the online optical without anything, how are they going to do? Are they going to be satisfied by it? I think the hands-on approach to it for right now seems to be working. I'm certainly not going to be the one who's going to say technology isn't going to play a role. But what I love is the hands-on approach. And so we haven't done a whole lot of online. Right now, I don't know if it's just the community we're in, there hasn't been a lot of pushback against that. But hopefully that's because we've been giving them great service.
Got it. Do you guys have any special sauce you think that kind of makes you stand out, or you never want to give the special sauce away? If those are your tips, but what are some like the little growth hacks that you guys are pursuing that have really worked? Maybe it's in advertising or marketing or just a personal touch. Anything that really stands out to you?
As far as sales go, a lot of that lens package, we saw a pretty big difference in our capture rate for lenses, contact lenses too. So we have kind of packages on contact lenses. We have a package that kind of applies to glasses as well. So our capture rate went up just because we simplified the process that was there. I would hope our special sauce is, hey, I'm a kid from this area and I work really, really hard and I care really a lot about how you're actually doing. And I think the people who work for me do that too. And so if I had any special sauce, I think it's that we hopefully care a whole lot.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest growth hacks that we had at one of the practices I worked at, was really just personal touch, emailing every single patient after every exam, making it a personal email and just being real. And that's I think the answer. How do you separate yourself from some of the online competition and things like that by being more and more human in a world that some say is becoming less and less human, but a chair. After a long day, it's like kind of me at the barber, but they get that sigh of relief, especially the ones you're going to see coming back to you, as a repeat patient. And that's a great feeling. And just having that connection is incredible. And the deeper you can build that, the better off, and your patients will become your advocates, it sounds like.
Oh yeah. So we had an event this weekend kind of in my neighborhood where they set the world record for breaking bread, like everybody in one place. Kind of weird.
That's
but it was
awesome
to be there with like your neighbors and your friends, and somebody introduces you and it's like, this is my doctor and he's awesome. And so yeah, the best thing to hear from anybody is that people are advocating for you without you having to do it. Because I'm not great at selling myself, so I love having people there who can kind of say nice things about me.
Yeah, totally. What are some, I'm just waiting for any other questions to come in here. We're just a couple minutes past 6 now. Anything you want to kind of close out on, or pieces of wisdom in the process of becoming an owner, and whether it's open and cold or buying in? Anything else there? You could, it doesn't have to be too high level. You can feel free to go as deep as you want.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. So like, being myself if it was 2013 again, and like you were, I was sitting in class again, how would I be worried about this? What advice would I give myself kind of if I was in that spot? I told you when you came in, I was like, you really want me to talk, because I just don't feel like I'm that special or I'm that unique. This is not that special or that unique. It really came down to an investment where I took the numbers and they made sense to me. I've worked pretty hard, I feel like, but I feel like everybody who made it to this point is definitely capable. If you're interested in it, there are resources that are there. You've mentioned them, ones that I didn't even know about. And there's a team that you can establish to help you out. It's not super intimidating. I think it's very, very doable if you're really, really interested. Vision Source, Essilor, you got the two names that are right there. They want you to succeed. They want people, other doctors to succeed. They're growing. I'm very excited to be a part of Vision Source for some of the things, the opportunities that are coming down the road for us. How I envision optometry looking in the future, where I say, I feel like not only am I happy to be a part of Vision Source, I feel like I need to be a part of Vision Source. There's a lot of teamwork and help that's out there if you want it.
Yeah, no, it's super valuable, and I couldn't agree more. I think they've got some really cool programs coming out, and we're planning some really great 2017 stuff with them around this. This is like a really hot topic, is just after graduation, how do you really get on your feet? And so we're thinking of doing some really cool content and media and courses built around that. So, stay tuned if you guys need more content around this. And same thing on the Essilor side. I think lenses and just the process of accurately making a prescription or deciding on a prescription or a type of lens and bringing that all the way through to a sale or even a second pair sale is so misunderstood by new graduates and even some docs, greater than 10 years out. So we're going to work as hard as we can to help on those things because we want to help practices, and that's one really good way. Cool. Yeah, I think that kind of wraps it up. This will be live for everyone to watch afterwards. And Jesse, if they want to get in touch with you, they can go ahead and comment on some of your articles here or on this particular one. Practice websites you want to shoot out there so they can take a further look at you?
Sure. So if you need to, you can definitely comment. I'll get the email feedback. If you want to, you can email me. My name, Jesse, Kahnk, Kahnk @gmail.com. Our website, so if you search for altoona-eyecare.com, johnston-eyecare.com, visionsource/ankeny.com, you'll get to our websites. So we have 3 different ones for the 3 different practices that are there. Emails are usually the best way to get a hold of me. I'll be very happy to talk about it. I've been trying to talk a little bit high level, not into any specifics, but definitely I'll be happy to get more in specifics if somebody wanted to kind of go down deep just a little bit.
Yeah, totally. And same thing over here, info@newgradoptometry.com if you guys want to reach me directly. And we're going to put out a lot more content on this, but this is good. Just starting to graze the surface. So I'm excited to have you on, Jesse, and to do this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, totally. All right, guys, wrapping up, and tune in for the next one. We'll do probably, I think, 2 more webinars before the year ends, and we've got a lot more planned in 2017. So thank you for all the New Grad Optometry fans and subscribers out there who stay tuned. I mean, super appreciated over here, and thank you guys for supporting us. Cool. Thanks, Jesse. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me. Hopefully it didn't bomb too much.
No, you did good. All right, guys. Take care.